Practicing the piano is a learned skill that takes patience, creativity, persistence, curiosity, and consistency. If you're experiencing a lack of progress, it's probably due to your practice habits, not talent level. Up until I was 18, I was really able to get away with horrible practicing systems, but when I got to college and grad school, it was clear that I needed to get it together and find better ways to practice. And so my practicing habits were transformed from about age 18 to 28 with the following practice mindset principles, and I'm going to share those with you today in 10 minutes. Principle number 1, goals are everything. I'm not just talking about those tangible long-term goals like yearly, monthly, or weekly goals that you put on your calendar and write down. Those are important for sure. I'm also talking about daily, hourly, and even minute-long goals. In other words, everything you do in your practice session should have a very specific purpose. When you sit down to practice, have an idea of what you want to accomplish that day. It could be something like memorize 4 measures, or make the right hand more expressive. You'll have multiple goals for everything in your practice session. For example, in this piece, C Mist, let's say I'm practicing the first 2 bars. I start by playing it through with the purpose of seeing what kind of shape it's in. Afterwards, I take a few seconds to analyze. Sometimes what you need to work on is obvious, like wrong notes or rhythm, and sometimes it's not obvious. Let's say I decide I need to focus on making my left hand more flowing and quieter so my right hand melody can sing out. So this is your new minute-long goal. You don't have to set a timer or anything, but know that this is your one focus for a minute or so. Then after that, you assess. If you feel like you made progress towards this goal, you can mentally check it off. If it still needs work, either set a new goal related to that, like just playing the downbeat of the measure with a soft left hand and a deep, rich sound in the right. Or make a note in your practice journal so you'll come back to this goal later on. This might sound like a tedious process, and maybe it'll feel like that at first, but after a while, it simply becomes the way you practice, and all of these things happen very quickly in your mind. But you can probably see how efficient this type of goal setting is. Without long, short, and very short-term goals, our practice lacks purpose. We don't troubleshoot, we mindlessly repeat, we get bored, and we don't experiment. Principle number 2, space out your pieces within each practice session. By now, we all know that our attention spans are incredibly short, so it's best to space our pieces out within each practice session to get the most out of our time. For example, if you have 30 minutes and are working on 2 pieces, try practicing piece number 1 for 10 minutes, piece number 2 for 10, then return to piece 1 for about 5 minutes and end with piece 2 for 5 minutes. And then in between each piece, you're going to take a super quick break, like a sip of water, while you stand up and walk around the piano. You'll hold on to information for longer and learn your pieces faster. Principle number 3, seek out your weakness. Often, we seek out our strengths within a piece and gravitate towards that. If we're good at the first 4 bars, it's really hard not to play those over and over because it makes us feel good and it's fun to play. But if you actually want to improve, find your weak areas and focus on those until they become your strengths. Principle number 4, problem solving is your mission. I've seen students of all ages come to a difficult section in their music, repeat it multiple times, trying to get it right, then they immediately give up with the idea that they'll just never be able to get it. Now, from my perspective, they really haven't even begun to try. When there's a difficult passage, you have to peel back the layers until you have a better understanding of what's actually going wrong. Be able to describe it in words so it's clear in your mind. If you're not sure, record yourself and watch and listen back. Let's use C Mist as an example again. I'm playing measures 6 and 7. Listen and figure out what's wrong. You probably could hear it, right? It was pretty obvious. There's a big pause in between measures 6 and 7. But now, how are we going to solve the problem? What is the actual cause of that pause? It's really that my left hand isn't moving soon enough down to this G position. In other words, I'm not thinking ahead. So now you problem solve. There's a rest right before the spot where I have to move. So to solve the problem, I'm going to practice moving my left hand during the rest in measure of 6. And I'll repeat that until that's comfortable, and that's how I problem solve it. This is maybe an overly simplified example, but you get the idea. When there's a problem, narrow it down to the actual cause, then get creative about solutions. Principle number 5, always change things up. No matter how effective a practice routine, game, or exercise is at first, after a while, it'll begin to lose its effectiveness due to boredom and adaptation. So always be thinking of creative and new ways to practice. Principle number 6, seek connections. Whether you're learning a brand new piece or memorizing something, always search for connections and stories in what you're practicing. For example, in CMIST, notice that the left hand is outlining chords. They're not just random notes put together. Then you might notice that the melody and harmony together remind you of the intro to Kiss Me by Sixpence None the Richer. And if you do not know that song, no worries. I don't know why I even know that. I think it was probably in some rom-com. The point is that you make your own connections that are meaningful to you. What does this remind you of? What is it like? What feelings does this bring up? How does it feel in your hands? Doing this creates an active and engaged mind, which is more likely to remember what you're teaching it during your practice sessions. Principle number 7, you can do more harm than good. If you're completely exhausted, sick, emotionally wrecked, it's better to call it a day and not force yourself to keep your same practice schedule. At a certain point, you really can do more harm than good if you force yourself to practice. Now, there is something to be said for sticking to your schedule, sticking to what you committed to. But you have to know the difference between just not wanting to do it and actually needing rest. You might pick up a bad habit or learn incorrect notes, and those can be hard to fix later on. Now, if every other day you're feeling like you're in this exhausted state, then that's a separate problem that you'll have to address. But for the occasional time that you're just extra whatever, tired, exhausted, consider not practicing and get the rest you need. Principle number 8, it's okay to go backwards in order to move forwards. Our piano journeys are ideally lifelong, and that means along the way you'll probably have a misstep, whether that's learning a bad habit or coming to the realization that you really do need to fix something about your technique that you've learned. When this happens, you're going to have to take a step or even many steps back in order to fix it. But this is crucial if you want to keep moving forward. So don't get discouraged if you need to go back a level or 2 or 5 for a little while. So those are the mindset principles I gathered when I finally got my practice game together. And they enabled me to take private piano, organ, chamber music, and French horn lessons every semester along with all my coursework and also keep my sanity. So I hope they're as helpful to you as they were to me. As always, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.